If you're over 60, joint pain is rarely sharp or dramatic. It shows up as stiffness in the knees, the hips, the fingers. It may not stop you, but it quietly interferes with sleep, movement, and daily comfort. At this stage of life, joint pain is rarely just wear and tear. It usually comes from low-grade inflammation that stays active at night and repairs signals that don't fully switch on while you sleep. What if part of that inflammation and the stiffness that follows could be eased not by medication, but by three very simple dry fruits many seniors already eat as casual snacks, without realizing they contain compounds that support joint repair and nighttime recovery? I'm Dr. Jonathan Reid, a geriatric physician with more than 25 years of experience working with older adults. And over the years, I've seen how small nutritional signals, used at the right time, can influence inflammation, sleep quality, and joint comfort far more than people expect. Research in nutritional physiology shows that certain anti-inflammatory fats, polyphenols, and minerals, when delivered through whole foods, can help calm joint inflammation and support connective tissue repair overnight. This isn't about numbing pain, it's about helping the body do the work it's designed to do while you rest. Tonight, I'll walk you through three dry fruits that support that process. Simple, familiar, and effective when used correctly. If joint stiffness has been quietly stealing your comfort, stay with me. And if clear, practical guidance like this helps you, like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel for more senior health insights. Number 3, dried figs. Dried figs are often dismissed as just a sweet fruit, but in older adults, they play a very specific role, and it has nothing to do with sugar or quick comfort. After 60, one of the most common joint complaints I hear isn't sharp pain, it's stiffness. The kind that shows up when you've been still too long. The kind that makes it uncomfortable to lie on one side for too long. The kind that turns the first movement in the morning into a slow negotiation with your body. This stiffness isn't coming from the joint surface alone. It comes from the soft tissues around the joint, the tendons, ligaments, and connective tissue, losing flexibility and hydration overnight. That's where dried figs matter. Figs are rich in polyphenols that act on low-grade inflammation in soft tissue, not just inside the joint capsule. This matters because much of nighttime discomfort doesn't come from cartilage damage. It comes from surrounding tissues becoming tight, reactive, and less pliable while you're still. Figs also provide a gentle combination of magnesium and potassium. Not enough to sedate, not enough to spike insulin, but enough to reduce nighttime muscle guarding. That subtle, unconscious tightening that keeps joints from fully relaxing when you. There's another layer most people miss. As we age, hydration of connective tissue becomes less efficient. Even if you drink enough water, the ability of tissues to retain it declines. Soluble fiber in figs helps pull water into the gut and maintain a steadier fluid balance, which indirectly supports tissue elasticity overnight. This is part of what people describe when they say, "My joints just feel less locked in the morning." I've seen this pattern repeatedly. One patient in her early 70s described waking up multiple times a night, not because of pain, but because her hips felt uncomfortable when she stayed in one position too long. She wasn't inflamed in a dramatic way. She wasn't swollen. She was simply stiff. After adding 1 to 2 dried figs in the evening, consistently, not aggressively, she didn't report no pain. What she noticed was something subtler and more important. She could stay asleep longer without needing to reposition. And in the morning, the stiffness eased faster. That's exactly what we're aiming for. Dried figs don't block pain signals. They don't numb the joint. They support the environment around the joint so it doesn't tighten and resist movement overnight. It's also important to understand what figs are not doing. They are not acting like dates. Dates tend to spike blood sugar and calm the nervous system briefly. Figs don't do that. They are not acting like cherries, which directly influence inflammation enzymes and sleep hormones. Figs work downstream on tissue flexibility, mineral balance, and recovery conditions. That's why they belong at number 3. They don't replace the need to control inflammation. They don't replace the need for deep sleep, but they solve a problem many seniors don't realize is contributing to nighttime discomfort. Joints that stiffen simply because the body is still. How to use dried figs matters. 1 to 2 figs is enough. More is not better. Have them about 45 to 60 minutes before bed, either alone or paired with walnuts. This pairing works well because walnuts reduce inflammatory signaling, while figs support tissue softness and mineral balance. Avoid sulfured figs. Avoid heavily sweetened varieties. And avoid eating them immediately after a large dinner. Digestion competition reduces their benefit. Used correctly, dried figs don't make you sleepy. They make it easier for your joints to tolerate stillness. And that matters because sleep requires stillness. But even when stiffness improves and tissues relax more easily, there's still one major piece left. Many seniors find that pain doesn't just come from stiffness, it comes from inflammation flaring and sleep becoming too light to complete repair. That's where the next dry fruit becomes critical. Because it doesn't just support joints, it directly connects joint pain to the depth and continuity of your sleep. Number 2, tart cherries. For many adults over 60, joint pain at night isn't constant. It comes in waves. You fall asleep feeling manageable discomfort. Then sometime between 1 and 3 in the morning, the pain quietly reappears. Not sharp, not dramatic, but enough to pull you out of deeper sleep. That timing matters. It tells us this isn't just a structural joint problem. It's a chemistry problem that shows up when sleep becomes lighter and inflammation is no longer being held in check. This is where tart cherries are different from almost every other food used for joint pain. They don't just target inflammation, and they don't just support sleep. They sit directly at the intersection of the two. Tart cherries are rich in anthocyanins, compounds that inhibit COX-2 enzymes in a way that resembles a very mild, food-based NSAID effect. Not strong enough to numb pain, but strong enough to lower inflammatory signaling that tends to flare at night. At the same time, tart cherries contain naturally occurring melatonin, not in doses that force sleep, but in amounts that gently reinforce the body's own nighttime rhythm. That combination is rare. Most interventions help pain or sleep. Tart cherries influence both, and that's why they matter so much for seniors. Here's the biological sequence most people never hear. When sleep becomes shallow, inflammatory signals rise. When inflammation rises, pain perception increases. When pain increases, sleep becomes even lighter. That loop is especially strong after 60 because the natural melatonin curve is already lower and shorter. Tart cherries interrupt that loop from both directions. By reducing inflammatory enzyme activity, they lower the baseline irritation in joints. And by supporting melatonin availability, they help sleep stay deep enough for repair processes to actually finish. I've seen this play out repeatedly. One gentleman in his late 60s described waking almost every night around 2 o'clock with a dull ache in his knees. Not severe enough to get out of bed, but enough that he'd turn, shift, and eventually lose the deeper part of sleep. After adding a small portion of dried tart cherries in the evening, consistently, the first change wasn't less pain during the day. It was fewer awakenings. Within 2 weeks, he was sleeping through the early morning hours more often. And only after that did his daytime joint comfort begin to improve. That order is important. Sleep quality improved first. Joint pain followed. That's exactly how recovery is supposed to work. Tart cherries don't mask discomfort. They create conditions where the body can complete nighttime repair without being interrupted. There's also a structural repair component that often goes unnoticed. Tart cherries provide vitamin C, which supports collagen maintenance in cartilage and surrounding connective tissue. This doesn't rebuild joints overnight, but it does support the slow, steady repair that happens when inflammation is controlled and sleep remains intact. That's why tart cherries outperform many supplements that target inflammation alone. Supplements can reduce markers, but they don't fix the sleep pain cycle. Tart cherries do. It's also important to understand what tart cherries are not. They are not sedatives. They don't knock you out. They don't spike blood sugar to make you feel relaxed. In fact, when used incorrectly, sweetened versions, excessive amounts, or eaten too close to a heavy meal, they lose much of their benefit. How you use them matters. A quarter to one-third cup of unsweetened dried tart cherries is enough. About 45 minutes before bed works well for most seniors. This timing allows the anti-inflammatory compounds to begin working as melatonin naturally rises without interfering with digestion. Avoid sweetened varieties. Avoid combining them with large late dinners. And avoid treating them like a dessert. This isn't about indulgence. It's about signaling. Used correctly, tart cherries don't make you sleepy. They make sleep more effective. They help keep inflammation low while sleep hormones do their work. They reduce the chances that pain will resurface just as the night should be deepest. That's why tart cherries rank above dried figs. Figs help with stiffness, but tart cherries help with continuity, staying asleep long enough for repair to matter. Still, even when inflammation is reduced and sleep deepens, many seniors wake feeling stiff, especially after long periods of stillness. That stiffness doesn't come from inflammation alone. It comes from how joints and surrounding tissues handle immobility overnight. And that's where the final dry fruit earns its place, because it doesn't just calm inflammation or support sleep. It forms the anti-inflammatory base that allows everything else to work. Number 1, walnuts. The anti-inflammatory base that makes nighttime joint repair possible. If tart cherries sit at the intersection of pain and sleep, walnuts form the ground beneath everything else. They are not a quick fix. They don't act like a sedative, and they don't take pain away in the way people usually expect. What walnuts do is more important, especially after 60. They lower the background inflammation that quietly amplifies pain at night, and they change how the nervous system perceives joint discomfort while you sleep. That distinction matters because most nighttime joint pain isn't caused by new damage. It's caused by heightened inflammatory sensitivity when the body is trying to rest. Walnuts are one of the few foods that consistently reduce that sensitivity. The primary reason is their omega-3 profile, specifically alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA. ALA doesn't behave like a painkiller. Instead, it gradually reduces inflammatory cytokines such as IL-6 and TNF-alpha, the same signals that tend to rise overnight in older adults. When those signals stay elevated, joints feel loud at night, not necessarily swollen, just irritated enough to interrupt deeper sleep. Walnuts help quiet that signal, but omega-3s are only part of the story. Walnuts also contain a unique mix of polyphenols that protect cartilage and connective tissue from oxidative stress, the kind that accumulates slowly and shows up as stiffness rather than sharp pain. This matters because joint tissue repairs most effectively during deep sleep. But repair can't happen efficiently if inflammation stays active. That's why walnuts work best before bed, not during the day. At night, the immune system shifts toward repair mode. Omega-3s support that shift by lowering inflammatory noise instead of suppressing the immune response outright. There's also a neurological layer that's often overlooked. Pain perception changes at night. As sleep deepens, the brain normally dampens pain signals. But in many seniors, that dampening becomes inconsistent. Walnuts influence this process by stabilizing neuronal membranes, again through omega-3 fats, making pain signals less intrusive during sleep transitions. In simple terms, the same joint irritation that feels manageable during the day can feel louder at night if the nervous system is inflamed. Walnuts help prevent that amplification. I've seen this repeatedly in people who describe their pain as not terrible, just always there. One woman in her early 70s described waking multiple times each night because her hips felt uncomfortable whenever she stayed in one position too long. Not enough pain to get out of bed, but enough to fragment sleep. After adding a small portion of walnuts most evenings, consistently, she didn't report dramatic pain relief at first. What changed was her sleep. She woke fewer times. She stayed in one position longer. And after several weeks, her morning stiffness eased without any other changes. That sequence is exactly what we expect when inflammation is being addressed at its source. Walnuts don't erase pain. They create a quieter internal environment where repair can occur. That's why they outperform many supplements marketed for joints. Supplements often target one pathway. Walnuts influence multiple systems gently and simultaneously. They also provide a small amount of natural melatonin, which complements, but does not replace, the effect of tart cherries. This low-dose melatonin doesn't force sleep. It supports sleep continuity. That's especially valuable for seniors who fall asleep easily but wake too often. How you use walnuts matters. About 1 ounce, roughly 6 to 7 halves, is enough. More is not better. Eat them about 45 to 60 minutes before bed. This allows digestion to begin without pulling blood flow away from repair processes. Walnuts should be raw or lightly dried. Avoid rancid nuts. Avoid heavily roasted or sweetened versions, and avoid using them as a late-night snack after a heavy dinner. This is not about fullness, it's about timing and signaling. When walnuts are used correctly, they don't make you sleepy. They make sleep more restorative. They lower the inflammatory baseline so that when tart cherries support sleep hormones and figs reduce stiffness, everything works together. That's why walnuts are number one. They are not exciting. They are not dramatic. They are foundational. Without them, the other two help, but not as deeply. With them, the body finally has a calm enough internal environment to repair joints overnight. And that's the real goal. Not masking pain, not chasing comfort, but restoring the biological conditions that allow joints to heal. Slowly, quietly, night after night. Joint pain doesn't ease simply because you ate something healthy. It eases because night is the only time your body's truly set up to repair joints, if the conditions are right. At night, cortisol naturally drops. Circulation slows but becomes steadier and less reactive. And the inflammatory signals that irritate joints during the day are finally easier for the body to quiet. For younger adults, that window often works on its own. For seniors, it doesn't. Low-grade inflammation tends to stay partially active. Sleep becomes lighter and more fragmented, and joint repair, which depends on uninterrupted deep sleep, never fully completes. That's where these three dry fruits matter. They don't work as isolated pain foods. They work because each one supports a different part of nighttime biology. Walnuts lower the inflammatory baseline so the night doesn't start in a pro-pain state. Tart cherries help sleep hormones deepen and stay stable, giving repair processes enough uninterrupted time. And dried figs support soft tissue recovery, helping joints tolerate stillness without tightening. When those pieces line up, the night finally does what it's meant to do. Pain doesn't ease because you took something. It eases because the night finally works again. Many seniors assume stiffness comes only from inflammation, but that's only part of the story. When you lie still for long periods, several things happen at once. Inflammatory fluid and metabolic waste settle around joints. Circulation through soft tissue slows even further, and the connective tissue, fascia, loses its ability to glide smoothly. That's why stiffness often feels mechanical, not just sore. Joints don't just hurt, they feel locked. This is also why lowering inflammation alone isn't always enough. Repair needs clear pathways, not just calmer signals. That's where gentle evening foam rolling fits naturally, not as a trick and not as a bonus, but as a logical extension of recovery. Slow, light rolling helps fluid move again. It reduces pressure around joints. And it opens the tissue pathways so nutrients from food can actually reach the areas that need repair overnight. Used correctly, foam rolling doesn't replace nutrition. It supports it. You're not forcing the body to heal. You're removing what quietly blocks healing from finishing its work while you sleep. For most seniors, joint recovery works best when nutrition and gentle movement are paired, in the right order. First comes the dry fruits, about 45 to 60 minutes before bed. This timing allows their anti-inflammatory and sleep-supporting compounds to enter circulation without competing with heavy digestion. Food sends the biological signal. The night is for repair. Next is gentle foam rolling, 10 to 15 minutes at most. This isn't about pressure or intensity. It's about restoring fluid movement, easing soft tissue tension, and clearing the pathways around joints so nutrients can actually reach the tissue they're meant to support. After that, a warm compress or a light warm shower. Warmth increases local perfusion just enough to enhance delivery without overstimulating the nervous system. It's a quiet nudge, not a push. Then sleep. Each step builds on the one before it. Nutrition sends the signal. Movement clears the way. Warmth improves access. Sleep completes the work. You're not forcing the body to heal. You're removing what gets in its way. This approach works because it's precise, and it's easy to undo if done carelessly. Don't eat large portions of dried figs. They're supportive in small amounts, but excess turns them into a sugar load that disrupts nighttime balance. Don't treat dry fruits like dessert. They're part of recovery, not a sweet reward after a heavy meal. Don't foam roll aggressively or press directly on joints. The goal is fluid movement, not deep tissue pain. And don't do this immediately after a large dinner. Digestion already demands blood flow. Adding mechanical work too soon competes with recovery. Most important, this is support, not emergency treatment. Consistency matters far more than intensity. Small, repeatable signals, night after night, are what allow the body to restore itself quietly and reliably. You're not watching this because you expect a miracle. You're here because you want your nights to stop working against you. Joint pain doesn't disappear by forcing the body harder. It eases when inflammation is lowered, sleep deepens, and repair finally gets uninterrupted time to finish its work. That's what this routine is about. Not tricks, not painkillers, not pretending age doesn't exist. Just giving your body the right signals, at the right time, often enough that it can do what it's still built to do. If joint stiffness or nighttime pain has been stealing your rest, don't overthink this. Try the approach you learned here for 7 nights. Same timing, same portions, calm consistency. Then pay attention, not just to pain, but to how easily you fall asleep, how often you wake, and how your joints feel before you start moving in the morning. If this video helped you understand your body a little better, support the channel so I can keep making content like this. Like the video. It helps YouTube show it to other seniors who need it. Subscribe for evidence-based guidance on sleep, joints, circulation, and aging well. And comment relief if joint pain has been affecting your nights. I read those comments carefully. You don't need louder solutions. You need better ones. And your body is still listening.